Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to today's presentation on Sharia-compliant investment in Bursa Malaysia. All right, so today's topic is going to be about, do Sharia-compliant stocks perform better in Malaysia itself? All right, so what I'm going to do basically is to give you a picture of how important is this Islamic or capital market, or even the stock exchange, or investing in stocks in Bursa Malaysia, and the potential of its growth, right here in Malaysia. So I'm gonna go down with a big picture first, and then we're gonna take a look at how big is our the Islamic capital markets. Okay, and we're gonna also take a look at how big is the Malaysian exchange as well in terms of its market value and also volume. All right. So welcome everybody. While we are still waiting for the rest to join us, we have Nadira. Hi, hello. Himin Pang, welcome. Jatinder, hello. And if you have any questions at all, even if it regards to the Bursa Malaysia-𝑖 products and services, if you need to know about more, about the Sharia principles and so on and so forth, you can ask, because we have we have Nadira, who's actually from Bursa Malaysia-𝑖, which she can actually answer your questions if I can't, right? I can't claim to be an expert in Sharia investing. But what we do in Equities Tracker is to basically did a research on the Islamic capital markets, and also, of course, stock investing in Malaysia itself. All right. Hi Daniel. Hi, welcome. Hi QNG. Right. So we're going to start a series of Sharia compliant investing in Malaysia, starting today, which is Tuesday, and we're going to have another 6 sessions after this. All right, we're going to cover several aspects into investing in Bursa Malaysia with Sharia compliancy, right? And this whole series is actually brought to you by Bursa Malaysia-𝑖. So we'd like to take this opportunity to thank Bursa Malaysia-𝑖 to entrust us with conducting this series of webinars to basically share with you information and also analysis on the Islamic capital markets, especially for Bursa Malaysia-𝑖. All right, so we're going to cover the big picture today, and of course, as we go on down through the webinars in the following weeks, you will go into more details. All right, so I'm just going to share my presentation screen right now. So first of all, whatever that we discuss here or mention here is basically based on it's for informational and educational purposes, right? It's not intended as any form as investment advice, right? So please do take note. All right. Okay, so we're going to start off with a big picture. I have to start right now because I'm probably going to take about 30-40 minutes to explain today's presentation. Then I hope that we have enough time to answer your questions. All right. Okay, so how significant is the Muslim community in the world globally, right? So if you look at these the religions of the world, these are the largest religions of the world. Christianity is still the largest, which is about 2.2 trillion. All right, and Islam coming second at 1.6 trillion. So it's quite significant, right? And what is more important is actually the growth of the Muslim population. All right, so Islam is currently being the second largest religion in the world. And if you look at the world religion infographics or demographics, right, you find out that the focus is towards, of course, the Middle Eastern is the highest number of countries there, which are Muslim countries, right? And they practice Islam, of course. You can see that it's more focused to the Middle Eastern towards the east, right? Asia, including Malaysia, Southeast Asia, right? And you see the red one are where it's more dense. Right? Even in North Africa, it's actually quite a lot of Muslims as well. Okay, so of course Malaysia is being the red color. If you look at the map, right? Red means we have more Muslims population in each country. All right. Now, so if you look at this graph over here, this is basically showing the population growth, right? 2020, 5.8 billion. Of course, now we are reaching about 6 billion. what we want to see is basically, the growth of the Muslim population. This is basically based on a Pew Research data. All right. So we are looking at 1.9 billion population, and in 10 years' time, it's expected to grow about 2.2 billion. It's like an increase of 300 million every year, right? You look at the percentage of Muslims against the rest of the other religions. You see, in 1990, there's only 19.9% or near 20%. Today is about 24.9%, and moving forward, we are looking at 26.4% growth in the Muslim population. So there is a significant growth, right? The growth is basically bigger than the growth of the world population altogether. So indeed, it is a market which cannot be overlooked. All right. If you look at the percentage of population, like I mentioned earlier, of course, Middle Eastern is the one that has the highest population, right? I mean, the highest density or the number of countries. But of course, the biggest population of Muslims is basically in Indonesia, right? Asia Pacific itself is 27.3%. So it's quite significant if you look again at the growth, in the earlier chart. But you can see the focus are mostly towards the East, right? Middle Eastern and Asia Pacific, and even the African continent. Okay, and let's take a look at the Islamic economies. Right, so we know that the population of Muslims in the world is actually quite significant, right, and therefore there is potential for economies in the Islamic countries as well. So we're going to take a look at a broad picture again, right, before we move into the details on the Malaysian Islamic economy and how big is the size of the economy. Okay, so if you look at the whole GDP by this is using PPP, which is the purchasing parity power, which is, I think, a little bit more accurate than the nominal GDP, which use the standard international market rates, right? So PPP basically uses the local, includes the local cost, the local inflation, and so forth. So it reflects better GDP figures. So here we are looking at a $120.7 trillion GDP in the world, and 20 trillion is from Muslim countries, right? So it's basically 16.7% from the total GDP comes from Muslim countries. Okay. The top 10 largest Islamic economies. Okay, Malaysia stands at the 8. Of course, the biggest is in Indonesia. Saudi Arabia come next, then Turkey, Middle Eastern countries. Then we have Nigeria, which is part of Africa, and Egypt, Pakistan, and then in Southeast Asia we have Malaysia. So Malaysia is the biggest in Southeast Asia. All right, we are 8th place in the largest Islamic economies in the world. Okay, the total wealth of Islamic countries is $8.2 trillion. So this is quite significant, and if Malaysia is being the front runner for Islamic capital markets, then we are in, and that's one reason why the government are basically really pushing to Islamic financing or Islamic capital markets. And Bursa Malaysia is now being one of the exchanges that offers an end-to-end Sharia investing platform or alternative for Sharia investors. I'm going to explain that later on, what we mean by end-to-end. All right. So there is potential. Malaysia this is a graph that shows the top 10 Islamic countries by wealth. All right, and Malaysia is at the 6th place. Of course, Indonesia is the 1st place. They are again the biggest contributor to the Islamic GDP. All right. So Malaysia is being at the 6th place. Now, what is interesting is later when we look at the Islamic exchanges, all right, the top exchanges in the world, then you see that Malaysia plays a very important role. Okay, so the Islamic exchanges by market cap alone, all right, is 2.12 trillion USD. Okay, that's the Islamic exchanges. All right. So the top 10 Islamic exchanges by market cap, Malaysia is at the 3rd place, comparable to Saudi Arabia and Indonesia. It's quite near. All right. So Malaysia is now, is a top 3 and is the 3rd largest Islamic exchanges by market capitalization. All right. So later we'll take a look at the details. So we are looking at, of course, the market cap of Malaysia today is about, this is in USD, right? So the 400 million, the 300 million that you see on the left hand axis is US dollar. All right. So here we are talking about $1.1 about 1.5 to 1.6 trillion ringgit, right, market cap in the Malaysian stock exchange. So I'll go into the details in a short while. All right, so let's take a look at the Islamic markets, because we are more focusing on the Malaysian market, right? And in Malaysian market, exchanges or capital market is quite significant in the Muslim population, the Muslim world. So it is quite important, right, to see the growth in the Malaysian market itself. So this is just recently we have Bursa Malaysia Chairman Tan Sri Abdul Wahid Omar in Sharia Investing Virtual Conference in 2020. He said that Islamic finance is no longer a domain caters to only Muslims, right? Globally, it has grown to be a $2 trillion industry. Okay, so rightly so, over the years, Bursa Malaysia has established itself as a global leader in Sharia listing and requirements and investments. All right, so it is a $2 trillion value in Islamic finance. So that's very, very significant, right? So therefore, Malaysia is taking a step towards providing this service on investing, okay, based on Sharia compliancy. All right. So 2 trillion in total Islamic finance, okay, in 2021 is expected to grow to 3.5 trillion and that's a 9.5% annual growth, compounded growth. All right. So 9.5% growth is quite significant if looking at the growth of the whole global economy itself, right? This is definitely much bigger, much faster in the growth. All right. Okay, this is Islamic finance, Islamic banking assets, and Islamic finance assets. What is more important right now, you see here, is that growth that we see, right? On the right hand side of the chart, 2015 to 2021, okay, that's expected to have a 11% annual growth, or annual compounded growth, right? In the Islamic finance assets expected to grow, right, to 3.461 billion in 21. And that's a 9.5% growth. So there is a significant growth, okay, in Islamic finance, especially over the last 10 years, right? And this will continue to grow as long as the Muslim population grows, and they need Sharia-based facilities, okay, including investing, right? Not just as an investor, but also companies that want to list themselves, to be in an end-to-end Sharia platform. All right, so we can actually attract also not just domestic companies that want to list their companies in Bursa Malaysia, but also foreign countries. And of course, we can also attract not just domestic investors, but also foreign investors. Right, so Malaysia is quite significant in the global Islamic economy. All right, when we look at the global Islamic economy indicator score, Malaysia is basically the top. All right, in terms of different sectors, right? For example, in the halal food industry, Malaysia currently is at the 5th place. All right, in the Islamic finance, we are number 1. Okay, in halal travel, Malaysia is in second place. In halal and pharmaceutical and cosmetics, right, Malaysia is number 1, right? So if you aggregate all them together in these industries, Malaysia scores the highest in providing, Sharia-compliant Islamic finance, right, or even the non-financial industries, right? So Malaysia plays a very important role, and of course, one of the biggest thing that Malaysia has done is to provide that halal certification, right? And that's where when you have a halal logo in a restaurant, that that restaurant is halal, right, for Muslims to go. Okay, or even products and services that people use, if there's a halal logo, then that these are Sharia compliant. All right. Okay, let's take a look at Islamic finance in Malaysia, right? They are basically divided into 3 categories. Okay, first of all is banking assets. Okay, this is the banking side, right? And of course, the second part is the capital markets. We are basically going to focus more on the capital markets. All right. And then we have Takaful, which is Islamic insurance. Okay, we're going to talk some of these in more details, like even bonds and sukuks, Islamic bonds, they're called sukuks, right? And takaful and so on. Like I said, this will be in the next total 7 sessions. So we got another 6 sessions, which we're going to zoom in into these assets. All right. So today we're going to just take a look at the stock market in general. Okay, because there's quite a lot of things to cover actually, right? Now, so the top countries, right, in Islamic banking in terms of assets, okay, Malaysia is being at the 3rd place currently, okay, after Iran and Saudi Arabia. So it is again quite significant, right? Malaysia being playing a role in the Islamic banking sector, right? Now, out of the top 100 Islamic banks, okay, Saudi Arabia has the strongest banks, right? Malaysia has the most number of banks and dominates the share of assets. Okay, so on the left-hand side of the chart, you'll see that that's the chart for in the number of banks. All right, and if you look at the number, Saudi Arabia only have 4 banks, okay, but their assets is 168.8 billion. Right, so imagine one bank assets how big they are, right? Malaysia has the most banks, 16 banks, okay, and the total assets is 205, okay, billion. So if you look at this, I mean the total assets, of course, Malaysia is the largest, but of course the bigger banks are in Saudi Arabia, right? So that being said, a lot of money also in the Malaysian market, in the Malaysian banks, right? This is again based on the world's largest Islamic banks. Okay, let's take a look at the growth of the Malaysian Islamic capital markets. All right, so you look at 2017, 2018, there was not much growth, but from 2018 to 19, there's quite a big growth. And of course, if you take a look at the longer term, you see there is continuous growth, right, in the Malaysian capital market. In terms of percentage of the Malaysian capital market, if you look at that line on the chart, that's the percentage, okay, against the Malaysian against the capital markets. So the line is the percentage of Islamic capital markets against the total Malaysian capital markets. All right. Of course, you can look only up to 2019 because 2020 the numbers are still being compiled, right? You haven't finished yet. So if you look at the growth from 2017, the past 3 years, 17, 18, 19, the growth has been significant. All right. Okay, so let's go and take a look at deeper into the Malaysian capital market size. This is a more recent data, all right? And later we can take a look at this data to show you later whether the stocks in Bursa Malaysia or Sharia compliant stocks is performing better than the rest, to just give you an indicator. All right. So if you look at this, this is the chart or the table that you see here is basically the total market cap of securities listed in Bursa Malaysia. Bonds and sukuks, right? Bonds and sukuk is basically Islamic bonds, right? And the total size of the Malaysian capital market, right? So the top chart, the top table there is the Malaysian capital market size total, right? So bonds is basically the conventional bonds and sukuk is basically the Islamic bonds, all right? So if you look at the bottom table, you only see sukuk outstanding, which is only the Islamic bonds. And of course, on the left-hand side, you see market cap for Sharia-compliant PLCs, all right? So if you look at the growth, all right, and let's say, for example, 2017, like there's 1.13 trillion ringgit, okay, market cap for Sharia-compliant PLCs against 1.9. Okay, later on the graph, we'll take a look at the percentage, like how much percentage of Sharia-compliant PLCs against the market cap. All right. So if you look at the years, throughout the years, there is actually quite significant growth, right? Okay, let me just get my pointer up here. Okay, it's like, for example, if you look at the sorry, I tried to remove this thing here. Okay, so if you look at this figure here, all right, if you look at the market cap for Sharia compliant PLCs from 2017 until 2019, it was 17, 18, 19, it was quite stagnant because the Malaysian market has been going sideways, right? But later we'll make a comparison, because what's more important is if you look at the change of market cap, right, at the top table here. All right, I'm just going to put a pointer here. For example, you look at the top table here in 2017, the market cap, total market cap in Bursa Malaysia was 1.9 trillion. As at April 2020 is 1.4. Right, so you see that drop, right, about 500 million decline in the total market cap in Bursa Malaysia itself, right, the total market cap. But Islamic Sharia is Sharia compliant public listed companies, I see in 2017 was 1.1 trillion, and it only fell to 9.7 1.1 trillion to 0.97, nearly 10 trillion. So the drop was minimal. Okay, I'll make a comparison chart in a short while as we go on. All right, so this is basically Sharia compliant securities of Bursa Malaysia by market cap. So there on the right hand side of the chart, you can see the percentage, right? So the top chart is basically by market cap. The bottom one is by the number of public listed companies which are currently Sharia compliant. So if you look at 2017, 18, 19, there is growth, right? In 2017, if you look at the bottom table over here, there were 688 companies that are Sharia compliant, and today we have 715, right? And the number has grown. The number of Sharia compliant companies against the total is about 76%, and for the past 3 years has been consistently around this level. All right, but that being said, you can see that the total market cap has actually increased. Okay, so despite the number of PLCs remain, the growth of number of PLCs remains stagnant, but we can see the total market cap has actually increased from 59 to 66%. Okay, so although the PLCs are, in terms of number of securities, has remained the same, but their market cap has grown, right? From 2017 even until today, when we look at 2020 April, right? Because that's when the market, since February this year to March, the markets fell, right? And it's starting to rebound right now. So that includes the market cap as of end of April itself. Okay. So why is this significant? Now, this shows you that, the Sharia compliant PLCs, the market cap was able to hold quite strongly, all right, as compared to the rest of the other stocks, okay, which has fallen. So I'll give you the percentage later on as we go, right? Islamic fund management statistics. So all this information, of course, we put a reference there. Later, we also share with you how you can download the slides, right, for you to take a look at the numbers here, because it may not be clear on your screen, especially if your internet is not good, right? So it is important to look at these figures again. So if you look at the first table there, that's Malaysian fund management industry. Those are Islamic asset under management for Malaysia, right? So the numbers in terms of percentage against the total asset management remains the same, all right? 22% and still 22%. The asset under management for Islamic, okay, asset, 2017 was 170, okay, and by March 2020 is 169.1. So the decline is, it's very insignificant. It's a very small decline, right? Of course, up to February or January and February, there's actually an increase from 170 to 178. There is also you can see there's also a decline in the total asset under management, right? From 776 to 745, that means the total asset management has gone down. If you look at, again, the growth, okay, of Islamic under management is still stagnant, but you see a decline in the total asset under management. Okay. This is Islamic net asset value. This is based on unit trust, right? The bottom table here. So you can see, again, there is a slight increase from 2017 to 2020, currently from 77 billion to 99 billion. So it's quite significant, right? Increase. And if you compare the increase in the total asset value of all unit trust companies, if you calculate it by percentage, you will not see the growth is not as significant as the Islamic one. All right. And you can see also the Islamic net asset value percentage against the total net asset value, all right, has increased from 18% just in 2017, and now is at about 22.9% of the total asset. All right. So it's basically the number of unit trust fund size, right, in Islamic capital has grown faster than the growth of the total unit trust fund size. Okay, so these are basic indications. Of course, you can go back earlier, to see the growth, right? From maybe the 10 years growth, and you can find all this data in SC's website or Securities Commission website. So we provide the link there. You can go and look at the details, because the biggest growth, I can show you the next one, would be from 2010 to 2018, 2017, right? So if you look at the Islamic asset under management in 2010 was only 48 billion, and today has grown, of course, up to 2018 has grown to 173 billion. Okay, but of course, right now it has increased. It's still about 170 plus lah, right? 170 billion. So the past few years growth was not significant because the market was, in fact, if you look at our Malaysian stock market, it has been bearish since 2018, right? So that's why you don't see that much growth in the past 3-4 years. Okay, but if the market really starts to be, or the economy really start to grow stronger again, you can see, the growth of Islamic capital markets or Islamic finance is going to grow even much bigger. All right. So like here, for example, right, in 2010, 48 billion to 272. You can see that the increase is really quite a lot, right? So against the total industry asset under management, right? So if you compare in 2010, there's only 48 billion, but the total fund management industry AUM is at 377 billion. So that only caters, the Islamic AUM is only 12.7% of that 377. Okay, but today, right? Of course, in 2018, it's at 21% or nearly 22%, right? And of course, if you look today, is also, today is also still at 23%. So the increase is still, there is still some increase, although the market fell, all right? But the increase is, of course, very mild, because markets were in a bearish trend since 2018. All right. So these are also fund management, but of course, these are REITs and also ETFs, and you can see there is growth in the ETF size as well, right? You look at this party, this is the total market cap for ETFs or REITs. Sorry, the first one in the top here is REITs, right? So REITs has come down, right? Again, you look at how significant the decline is, right? From 46 to 39. Okay, from 46 in 2017, and in March 2020 it was 39. So there's a 7 billion decline, right? But on the Islamic real estate unit trust, real estate investment trust or REITs, has only fallen about not even less than 1 billion. All right. And because of that, you can see that the Islamic market cap against the total market cap for REITs has increased from 41% to nearly 46%. All right. The Islamic ETF fund size or Islamic exchange traded fund, same thing here, but this the ETF has just slightly has gone down, right? Whereas the total market cap has actually gone up. All right, so ETFs is a little bit different because REITs are basically mostly local properties and so on. But when you talk about exchange traded funds, we have many different kind of funds, right? We have these foreign funds, we have domestic funds, we have also foreign funds. So of course, foreign funds that has or funds that has done very well are those who are investing in technology sector, especially in the US, right? So if you look at the best performance unit trust currently in the past 3 years, right, is a technology-based fund, right, which it provides a quite significant increase. Okay. Okay, I've got to go on quickly here. This is an overview of the Malaysian Islamic capital market. And if you want to have more details, you can actually go to Bursa Malaysia website or bursamarketplace.com to get all this information or to get the updated information, right? Because this information is updated up to today. So today, we have 770 out of 932 companies. And we're going to see how many stocks that are, Sharia compliant, right? So there are 932 stocks, all right, total companies, PLCs, right? And there are 732 which are Sharia compliant. Okay, there are a total of basically 16 ETFs, 6 of them are Sharia compliant. Okay, 4 out of 18 Sharia-compliant REITs, and 4, of course, there's only 4 exchange-traded bonds and sukuk, which is traded in the Bursa Malaysia-𝑖 platform. So Bursa Malaysia-𝑖 is a platform. I'm going to explain to you what's this platform all about. All right. And of course, as an investor, you have an option, right? Of course, if I'm a Muslim and I only want to look at a Sharia platform, then you can actually open a Bursa-𝑖, Bursa Malaysia-𝑖 investing account, because that will give you an end-to-end, Sharia compliancy. Okay, from the moment you buy your shares towards the processing and until you sell the shares, right? It's all through a Sharia compliant manner. Okay. Right, so these numbers has grown significantly, right? So there are now 732 companies out of the 900 companies in Bursa Malaysia which are Sharia compliant. Okay, so this is basically the breakdown, right? I'm not going to go through very much on the breakdown. So you can see like iREITs here, there's 4 of them. Okay, Al-Akar KPJ REIT, there's Axis REIT, KLCC, it's a staple REIT, and Al Salam REIT, and Axis REIT is one of the best performing REITs, right? I think just last Saturday when Alvin and I, we were talking in another Bursa Malaysia's event or webinar, we talked about REITs, right? And Axis REITs is one of the best performers. Okay. We have the exchange traded bonds as well. So these are basically all products that you are able to trade, right? And these are all Sharia compliant products. So the question right now is for those who are not do not have any knowledge or do not have any information or do not know what is Sharia compliance, how do they actually or what criteria that they use, okay, to know that these are Sharia compliant. So there is actually a process, okay, to determine whether that particular counter, the stock, whether that REIT, whether the ETF, or whether the bonds are Sharia compliant or not. All right, but I'm not going to go into that detail because I do not sit in that Sharia Advisory Council. Right, there is a Sharia Advisory Council in the Securities Commission to decide, right, whether these products are basically, or this investment asset class is Sharia compliant or not. All right. Okay, so basically Sharia compliant products stay away from prohibited elements. So there are 4 major categories where it is prohibited. First one, of course, is the interest-based riba. All right. So if any financial services is based on interest, then it is not compliant. Okay. Of course, there's element of gambling. Then of course it's not compliant as well. Okay. And any uncertainties in contracts regarding contracting parties to avoid dispute later, okay, if there's a contractual uncertainty which is called gharar, then it is also not compliant. Okay, of course, the other non-permissible activities are like the conventional insurance, because of the way they structured those insurance policies, right? Non-halal food, of course, and of course all these other things like tobacco and so on and so forth. Okay. So these are basically that element, okay, to decide whether the company has these elements, okay, and if this company has these elements and these elements makes up of major products or services provided at the company, then it cannot be, it will not be Sharia compliant. Okay, so there is actually a process. Okay, so the Sharia screening process is carried out by the SAC, or the Sharia Advisory Council or Securities Commission, right? And this is done every May and November. So every May you will see a number of counters or number of companies that are being Sharia compliant, and there's a review, right, every May or November as well, based on their latest annual audited financial statements. Because your company can be Sharia compliant, but if your business activities, for example, but that particular year did not meet one of the requirements, okay, and mostly it's financing, right, then they can actually be taken off that list. So as long as they do not meet the requirement, they can be taken off. So once we are Sharia compliant, it doesn't mean that it's Sharia compliant forever. Okay, so they will look at it, they will screen at it on a yearly basis, twice a year, May and November, to make sure that these companies are still being Sharia compliant, all right, or meeting that requirements of Sharia compliant. Okay. Well, I'm not going to go to this into details, all right, because this is basically some of the guide that they use to make sure that the company is Sharia compliant. So they have the quantitative assessment, right? And also qualitative assessment. Yeah. So the quantitative is, you have certain rules, right? For example, if a company does conventional banking, right? Not a Sharia bank, not a Islamic banking, right? If the conventional banking activity is more than 5%, then it is not Sharia compliant. But if that banking activity or the conventional banking activity is less than 5% of the total banking activity, then it can still be considered as Sharia. All right. So there is a small leeway. All right. It's not strictly that they cannot do conventional banking. Okay. And if you look at the other one, it's like share trading, stockbroking businesses. If the company has less than 20%, of course, if that company, a listed company is doing just stockbroking business, then it cannot be Sharia compliant, right? Now, of course, that depends on other criteria. Okay, so there's also financial ratio benchmark, and so on and so forth. Okay, so like I said, I'm not going to go into details because whatever it is, all of this will be decided in the Sharia Advisory Council, right, to make sure or to know whether that company meets Sharia requirements or not. All right, so every May and November, SC will come up with a list. Okay, whether that company is being removed from that Sharia compliant list or being added. Okay, so once you remove means you can still work on your requirements, and in the next review, the company can actually be Sharia compliant again. All right. Now, of course, the other qualitative assessment is public perception, and of course, any activities that's against, Islamic principles, then of course it is not Sharia compliant. Okay. Now, again, you can get all this detail in Bursa Malaysia, and you can also get details in bursamarketplace.com or even Securities Commission. Okay. So now Bursa Malaysia-𝑖 is the world's first end-to-end Sharia investing platform. It offers the first end-to-end Sharia investing platform. All right. And it was launched in just 4 years ago in September 2016. Right. So you can get more details. If you go to SC, you can get more details there. So, but what basically is Sharia platform, or end-to-end Sharia compliant securities on investing in the exchange, right, platform? So now, if you look at the on these graphics here, okay, the top part is the conventional buying and selling of shares, right? The whole process of investing in the exchange. Okay, so all types of investors go through a broker, and then the broker basically buys the shares, whether it's the main market, ACE market, or lead market, and then Bursa Malaysia acts as a facility to facilitate these trades, right? Based on trading, clearing, settlement, and depository, and of course they work with financial institutions, okay, to provide whether there's margins, or whether the settlement in its clearing and trading and so on, right? So this is the conventional way. Okay, so in the earlier stage, Bursa Malaysia has come up with basically a filter. All right, so Sharia, if I'm a person who only wants to look at Sharia compliant stocks, I can have a screen where it only shows Sharia compliant stocks. All right, so that's the only difference. That means I cannot buy or sell non-Sharia compliant stocks if I go through this. Okay, but it still goes to the conventional trading, clearing, settlement, and depository, which is the facilities provided by Bursa Malaysia. All right, so that's still conventional. So in 2016, I just mentioned, now, okay, that clearing, settlement, and so on, the facilities that provided by Bursa Malaysia is now done through Islamic financial institutions. That means that now it is fully Sharia compliant. Okay, so end-to-end means from the beginning up to the end, it is all fully Sharia compliant. Now, why this is important? Because again, Malaysia being one of the largest exchange right now in the world, okay, for Islamic or for Sharia compliant investment, will play an important role, right, in the global Islamic capital markets, okay, moving forward. Okay, so now see, these are some of the benefits of end-to-end Sharia compliant investing. We have a product perspective, and of course, ethics perspective as well. And of course, if you are a Muslim, of course, you follow Muslim or Islamic principles, right? To guide you. And of course, we talk about halal and also haram. So of course, in investing, especially when it comes to investment, or when you want to buy products and services or whatsoever, Muslims will want to be very wary about whether that product is Sharia compliant. All right. So Malaysia has come a long way in this, come up with really very comprehensive requirements for being Sharia compliant. Okay, so from a product's perspective, it prohibits elements such as, like I mentioned earlier, right, the riba, the interest, the gara, the contracts, and and so on. Okay, so we have all these. So it prohibits from these activities which is deemed not so ethical. Okay, so it's also lower risk because it goes through a Sharia screening process to filter out volatile investing instruments, right? Especially in so-called sin stocks, right? We're talking about alcoholic beverages, or even tobacco, or even gambling. It can be volatile because when there's a change in policies or whatsoever, they can be severely affected. All right. Better quality investment products, okay, because if it's ethical, okay, the product should be able to last longer, right? Instead of products which are more controversial. All right. Larger investor base. I'm going to talk about this later on. What will be the value proposition for the for Sharia investing? All right. So let's just briefly take a look at performance. I think this is what we want to know, right? Whether because the title of this whole webinar itself is do the Sharia compliance stocks perform better in Malaysia, right? So we can have a general view. Stocks again, right, are depending on many factors, right? It's not just whether you are being Sharia compliant or not, but of course, in the longer term, we do see some results, right? Again, we are all trying to be data driven here, right, to make sure that we make the right decisions, right? So if you look at this, this is the index performance growth from 2010 to 2019, and you can actually do this. I mean, you can actually do an analysis on the index performance. So here we have the KLCI, which is a red line, and then we have the FBM Emas Sharia, okay, the yellow line. We have the FBM Hijrah Sharia. If you want the details of what this this index stands for, again, you can go to Bursa Malaysia website to check out what are the components of these stocks, right? Of course, we also have the small cap Sharia index. Okay, so over the years, you can see that normally the Sharia indices outperforms the KLCI, right? So for example, over a 10-year period, the KLCI has gained 12.4%, but the FBM Emas Sharia has gained 16%, and the FBM Hijrah Sharia has increased 27%, right? And if you do the same time frame, right, for example, from 2000 to 2010, you will see that growth as well. All right. This is what I mentioned to you earlier, right? When we look at Sharia compliant securities on Bursa Malaysia based on market cap, right? So if you look at the first on the left hand side, you see that the market cap in 2017 was 1.9 trillion, and it fell to 1.47 trillion at the end of April. So that is actually a 22.9% decline. Okay, but market cap for Sharia compliant PLCs has only declined 13%. Okay, so the decline, of course, markets decline because the whole market was in a decline in the past 4 years, right? So definitely decline, but the decline in Sharia compliant PLCs is lower, right, than the total market cap of Bursa Malaysia. Okay, and that's the reason why we also see that the percentage of total market cap of securities listed in Bursa Malaysia for Sharia compliant PLCs or companies has increased from 59% to now 66.4%. All right, so there is significant growth, and this is where sometimes share prices or companies or stocks are being tested as well. Is during a downtrend, you can see that there are stocks that fallen much more than some others, right? So here it basically shows you that the Sharia compliant PLCs has declined, but the decline is not as big as the other stocks or the other counters. All right. So the index itself shows that time and time again, the index always outperform the the Sharia indexes, or Sharia indices has outperformed the KLCI itself, right? And even from the total market capitalization from of view, you can see that they have actually stood quite well in the downtrend. And if you go and look at the whole market in an uptrend from 2008, for example, when the market bottomed out, right, after the subprime mortgage crisis in 2008, you can see also that the growth of market capitalization in the Sharia compliant PLCs has actually increased more than the total market cap growth. All right. So that shows you, the growth is always stronger and the decline is weaker as compared to the conventional or the rest of the other or the total market cap. All right. Okay, so these are basic. The other thing is that if you're only trading in a conventional market, we are only attracting conventional investors, fund managers, unit trusts, and so on and so forth, which only trade the conventional one. But in a Sharia compliant platform, it attracts both sides, right? Because the conventional investors can also trade in the Sharia compliant platform, and the Sharia investors, this is additional, right? Who only trades in Sharia compliant platform will go into Sharia compliancy. So you have more market which is able to go through Sharia compliancy. Okay, so that what makes it interesting, because this will attract, again, not just domestic investors and listed companies, but also foreign. Okay. Okay, I'll just mention this as well. So I'm just going to go on. Okay, and of course, one of the things that the Malaysian has actually, positioned itself quite well, providing the facilities right now, because we are the world's first end-to-end, share investing services or share investing platform that Sharia investors can do. Right? Imagine companies in Asia, or even let's say the whole world, in Middle East and even in Africa, when they start to grow and they want to look for a platform to either list a company or to invest, Malaysia will be the first choice, because we are the first one that provides an end-to-end facility. So if the countries, of course, we look at the growth of the country. So the growth of the country is very important. So to see the growth of the Muslim population, right? Because that's where the market is. All right. So definitely, as the population continues to grow, the services is, especially Sharia compliance services will be more better, right? Will perform better. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this. And of course, this will also attract Sharia mandated funds, right? So if you look at the biggest funds, right? The big funds in Malaysia, of course, EPF is the biggest. EPF actually invests 48% on Sharia compliant investment products. All right, we have 52% non-Sharia compliant. So you can see the significance there. Right? It's almost half is being used to trade or to buy Sharia-based assets. All right, not just stocks, but other assets like bonds and sukuks and so on as well. Right. So 42% of that is invested in equities. Right. So half of the asset is being invested in Sharia assets, and that half, 42% of it, is in equities, which is approximately about 158 billion invested in Sharia equities. Right. KWAP, okay, this is about 69 billion. Okay, EPF is 158 billion invested in Sharia equities. 69, almost half of EPF is from KWAP. PNB is also 68 billion, almost the same as KWAP. Right. Tabung Haji has 47 billion invested in Sharia equities. So these are all funds that has mandate to also invest in Sharia compliant instruments, all right, or assets. So definitely, and it's like 50%, like for example, EPF are basically Sharia compliant assets. Right? This shows how significant it is, the contribution of these assets or these fund managers into the Sharia compliant. All right. Another thing is that, of course, there will be sometimes short-term effects. People saying that if the company is in a Sharia compliant list, the stocks can go up, and if it's not, if it's being removed from the list, the share price came down, right? Like for example, there's this news here in November 2017. DG falls because he was removed from the Sharia list. All right. There are a few more examples. Like for example, there's a glove manufacturer CarePlus, right? In November 2017, it was being removed from the Sharia compliant list. The share price came down. All right. This one, 𝐒𝐥𝐢, okay, which is a construction and building materials company. This is in November 2017 when it was listed in Sharia compliant. The share price went up. All right. So we can look at a few examples, but you know what? In Equities Tracker, we actually have done our research, right? And we cannot just base on this alone to tell you whether the price is going to go up. So don't go and look at the list in May and November, and when the stock is inside that list, you can buy the shares, right? It doesn't work that way, because there are, like I said earlier, there are many other factors that are actually affecting share prices of a company. So we have to look at the other aspects as well. But definitely being in a Sharia compliant list will have benefits in the longer term. Okay, and you can see there are a lot of companies when we do have a research actually. Maybe we're going to present it towards the next webinars, right? Because we actually doing research on all the Sharia compliant companies and see how they perform before and after being compliant or not. But one thing that we find out is this, right? That whenever a company is being taken out of the Sharia compliant list, they will always want to try to come back to the list. At least they take 1 year to go and clean up their financial activities or whatever business activities, so that it is Sharia compliant, and then most of them will be back into the Sharia compliant list, right? So that's why you can see the number of PLCs that are being Sharia compliant over the years has been increasing. Of course, there are times when it comes down and then there are times when it goes up, but over the years they have been steadily increasing because they do see benefits being Sharia compliant. Remember, I told you about the pool of funds, right? Conventional investors are able to invest, and also Sharia investors. All right. So you have a bigger pool of investors. Okay. And hopefully when the market gets bigger and more foreign investors come into the Malaysian market, then definitely it can be much more beneficial. Okay, so we did a research, of course, like here, for example, in November 2018, this is Hong Leong Industries, right? I just pick out a stock to give you an example, right? It was removed in November 2018, price came down. So I mean, you look at the previous example, it was 2018. Of course, 2018, the market actually came down for a correction, right, after hitting a historical high. So most of the stocks fell anyways, right? So whether you're in Sharia compliant or not, most counters fell, right? So here you see, for example, in 2019, they were being relisted back again after a year, right? So being relisted means the price, it doesn't mean that the price is going to go up, right? Here you see that the price is actually going down as well. Okay, why? Is it because it's being affected by other factors. Okay, but of course, remember I show you that, despite the fall in prices, you'll find out that in general, right, because we are talking about total market capitalization of Bursa Malaysia, in terms of the fall in market cap for Sharia compliant stocks is smaller than the total market capitalization. So although the shares fell like the rest of the other markets, the rest of the other shares, but their decline will not be as big as the non-Sharia compliant ones. All right. So like I said, right, the price goes up or goes down, all right, does not really or is not really affected by whether it is being removed or being added to the Sharia compliant list. But like I say, in the long term, it's probably beneficial. Okay, but it is not an indicator for you to actually buy and sell based on that list. All right, so we'll be waiting in November and in May. Okay, but there are many other analyses, right? And there are many other elements that affect share prices, like the company's value proposition, their shareholding structure. Even though they are Sharia compliant, but we also need to look at who owns that company shares, right? And the industry that are in, and of course the performance or the financial performance of the company themselves, right? So all these have to be taken into account, and that's the reason why the next session we're going to talk about how to identify good Sharia compliant investment stocks to invest in. Right, we'll take a look at other factors as well. Okay, so in the long term, of course, this will provide additional benefit being a Sharia compliant company. All right, but it is not an indicator to actually buy or sell. Okay, but if you have knowledge on how to identify a good company to invest in using other metrics, then that will be more powerful. So please don't join us again back next week, right? We're going to talk about how to identify investment stocks. And in Equity Tracker, we always believe in data, right? So most of the information that we provide is based on facts and data. All right, so do join us next week. All right, so I'm going to come into questions, and if you want to download the slides for today, please go to this website, bit.ly/Bursa Sharia, or you can do a scan to get into the website. And once you have completed that form, then the slides will be sent to you. All right. But please bear in mind, it will take probably 1 or 2 days before the slides are being sent to you. Okay, so you have to fill out the form first, and then we will send the slides to you into your email. So make sure you enter a correct email. All right. So that we also note down in the comment section on how to add the slides. Okay. All right. Well, 55 minutes I've spent to explain. I hope that yes, provide some information for you guys, right? And we able to help you to to know more about Sharia compliant investments, or Sharia investing, right? Because as if we do not have this information, we will not know what's going on, right? But a lot has been done in the Islamic capital markets, not just the stock market, but the whole Islamic financial market as well, right? And Bursa Malaysia, of course, provided that facilities for end-to-end Sharia investing. It will be quite interesting to see the developments in the coming years. All right. Okay, I hope that this is good information for you guys, especially for those who do not know. And please do, you have any questions you can ask. Like I said, if I can't answer your question, we have actually people from Bursa Malaysia-𝑖 to answer your question. So I try to attempt to answer your questions. Yeah. Yeah, so there are some comments here that shows quite Malaysia is being one of the four front runner for Malaysia, or for halal certification for Islamic finance, Islamic capital markets, and so on. Yes, it is quite true, right? Okay, CH Ang on YouTube. Why is Islamic FD not guaranteed by PIDM? What do items we need to look to assess its risk? Okay, Ang, I get a representative from Bursa Malaysia-𝑖 to question, because you are on YouTube, right? Those guys are on Facebook. But I'll get the questions for them, okay, so that they can answer to you. We will answer on your YouTube comment later. All right. Kim Boon Chong, should I convert my EPF normal fund to Sharia compliant fund? Well, it really depends. Okay, to basically, what we did in Equity Tracker, because we also have our own portfolios, right? In our own research, in our own investments as well. And you find out that the companies that we invest in, mostly Sharia compliant, all right, and they have been doing quite well, because our objective is to make a 15% CAGR a year, right? And we were able to achieve that over the years. Okay, and one of the things that banking stocks, most of them are not Sharia compliant, right? Because they have the conventional banking. And in Equity Tracker, we also don't really invest in a lot of banking stocks, right? In fact, only maybe 1 or 2. But banking stock is not in the list, right? And for ethical purposes, for me, I also not buy shares like Genting and so on and so forth. That's me, right? But it really depends on you whether you want to put into a Sharia compliant fund. But if you're talking about funds, of course, funds is also quite subjected to the performance of that fund manager, okay? So you can actually look at the best performing funds, all right, and see what kind of products they actually invest in. And you find out that Sharia-based funds has actually done exceptionally quite well actually over the long run. All right. So you look at the performance, there are quite a number of funds available. So you need to look at which one you're comfortable with. And basically, if you're buying onto funds, then it's better to diversify. Okay, but if you want to look at stocks to invest in, which stocks are good to invest in, then join us next week, because that's where we're going to take a look at how you find good stocks. All right. Check historical performance. Sharia is lower, perhaps low variety for investability. Lim Kai. Well, yeah, maybe if you look at 10 years ago, it was lower, because right now, 700 companies out of 939 companies are already Sharia compliant. So I mean, almost like 70%, almost 70%, right? Is basically Sharia compliant today. So it's not really, variety of investability. Okay, but of course you don't. Of course, stocks like Berjaya Toto and banking stocks and Genting and all those alcoholic and tobacco companies, they are not in the list, so you take that off, And if you want to invest in so-called ethical companies, right, which is based on Sharia principles, then yes, right, there are actually quite a lot of options, including semiconductors, including plantation companies, including other industries, lah, right? So there is quite a number of them you can actually invest. Okay, Abdullah Izzuddin, assuming every May, November, a particular company is removed from the Sharia list, is there a guiding time frame for unit trust company with the stock in the profit to exit the stock? Yes, in fact, there are guidelines. All right. In fact, they have to get up. It depends on the particular funds, or the process, right, or the procedure for that particular funds. Some of them actually have to exit almost immediately, right? And that's one of the reasons why you see sometimes. So if you find, so that's why it's important to also look at that shareholdings in that company, right? For example, if that company, for example, has one of the major shareholder is Tabung Haji, let's say, right? Then of course, if they are removed from the Sharia compliant list, that could affect the share price quite a lot, because Tabung Haji will have to go and sell their portfolio, and and because of that, right? Of course, speculators will, sometimes tend to be scared and they will start to exit first. So you normally see this kind of shocks in the short term, right? But over the long term, you will not see, as long as the company is still doing well, whether it's Sharia compliant or not, the share price can still hold strong. But in the short term, we'll definitely see some volatility, right? The market needs to correct itself, because if, let's say, Tabung Haji has to sell, someone has to buy it, all right? And if the price comes down, it creates value, and when people look at value, they will start to buy back again. All right. Okay, what happens if a listed company which is Sharia compliant at the time issues a bond or warrant, but 6 months later falls out of Sharia compliance? How about those who have invested and holding those instruments? Now, I'm not sure whether the warrants and or bonds are Sharia compliant, but maybe friends in Bursa Malaysia is able to help Stephen Chia to answer the questions there. So can you help me to answer that question? Yeah. Okay. Right. So again, because this is only the first webinar that we're conducting for Sharia investing. Of course, there'll be more to come, right? Please do continue to join us, because there'll be more information that we'll basically be sharing with you guys, right? We're even going to talk about iREITs, or Islamic or Sharia compliant REITs, Sharia compliant ETFs, and of course we're going to talk about stocks as well, right? On Sharia compliant stocks and how you actually find good investment in Bursa Malaysia itself. All right. So okay, I think there are not many questions. Oh, okay. Thank you very much for not asking that much as well. So I hope it's enlightening, right, to see the information I passed you today. Like I said, this is just a first guide. I did not present the whole thing, because you want to look at the whole Islamic capital markets, there's there's a lot of information. But today I'm only focusing on the Bursa Malaysia-𝑖, right, or the exchange. So the links are there on the slides, right? So you can go into that links and look for more information if you want to dig deeper. But this information is basically good enough to, number one, show you how the growth in Islamic capital markets and Islamic finance in the past 10 years or so, right? They are growing at about 9 to 11% compounded annually. So that's quite good, right? 9 to 11%. And you can see the growth in the Malaysian stock exchange itself, right? The number of stocks that are being listed as Sharia compliant, the number of public listed companies which are Sharia compliant has gone up. The market cap, okay, although the market cap has been stagnant or going down over the past 4 years, but if you look at the long term, of course, it's increasing, and you see that the performance is actually better than the total market cap of Bursa Malaysia itself. So this data basically shows you over the long term, right, that there is some benefits of being Sharia compliant, right? So again, we really need to look at other aspects or other factors that affect share prices and its value itself, not just being Sharia compliant. But like I said, the Sharia compliancy definitely helps, in its holding its value a little bit. All right. So guys, I hope you are able to just go to the website that I just show you, bit.ly Bursa Sharia, so that you are able to do an evaluation form and see whether this session actually helped you, because we need your feedback as well, and Bursa Malaysia-𝑖 needs your feedback as well. So if you have any comments, there's a section right down there where you can insert some comments, or or information that you need, all right, from them itself to explain much further. All right, so yep, so I'm going to end this presentation here tonight. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again next week, okay, for another round or another session for on Bursa Sharia investing. And of course, on a daily basis, we will still have our live sessions going on. All right, so thank you very much for joining me, and we'll take a look at your questions again, the comments, and we'll try to answer you guys. If not, Bursa-𝑖, those who are in charge in Bursa-𝑖 will also take your questions and answer them. Okay, so thank you very much, and we'll see you again. Have a good evening.